Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video series for 2023 is on setting up your first garden. Today we're going to talk about where to place your beds, a little bit about trellising, setting it all up. The videos that are going to follow are really about what do you plant, where do you plant it, and how do you plant it. I've gotten a lot of questions asking, can you give me a plan on what to put in my garden? We're going to cover cool weather crops, warm weather crops, and just how you would put them in a garden. I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. But today, if it's your first garden, you want to step back beginning of April, sometime in March, and you want to see how the sun tracks. Over this way is north, straight ahead is east, south is right over there, and behind me is west. The strongest sun is going to be south to west. You want to look at your trees. If you're looking at your garden before the leaves come in, you want to kind of have an idea of how the sun may be blocked by the trees. I put my garden in a place where it gets well over 8 hours of sun, if not 10 or 12, depending on how long the day is. So maximum sun. For most of your gardens, you want 8 hours or more. You just can't get around not having enough sun. So this is based on 8 hours or more of sun. I have videos on shade gardens and stuff like that if you want to check them out. I'm also not going to be talking about setting up your beds with soil, fertilizers, etc. I will put some of those videos I've already done in the video description, so you can check out my channel, find everything that you really need. So right now you see a path going down the middle. Behind me is west. South is over there. So if I grew really tall crops in here, pretend the trellises aren't there, they're going to cast shade over this way. It's going to be similar to what this GreenStalk tower is doing. We're not quite till noon yet, but the shade will cast all the way over. So if you're going to do long rows, like maybe just earth beds, the best way to do long rows that are maybe like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, even 100 feet is this way. So that the beds, we're going to turn south, so that the beds are going straight towards the south. They'd be almost perpendicular. And then you space them every 3 or 4 feet. This way, when you get the southern sun, all the sunlight is coming right down the path and hitting both sides of your beds. They'd be earth beds. They could be raised beds if you want them. And it's really more important about placing your beds when you're doing long rows, having them south. This way you get maximum sunlight coming down. When you're just doing raised beds like this, it really doesn't matter that much because they're smaller. The sun tracks around, you have space in between them, and you can really set your beds however you want, keeping in mind that you want the south and the western sun to be impacting your garden the most. So I have a big row right down here. I designed it that way so that I can walk down it, enjoy the garden, and then I have different size raised beds placed down the row. That was the main starting point for my garden. And then if we turn here, the southern sun would come right in between here, hit this side and this side. And it doesn't, again, I want to stress, it doesn't overly matter how you place your raised beds, metal beds, wood beds, whatever. Coming over here, we have another row, straight down. Western sun comes in here, still have the southern sun that can come through the row here and land on my beds over here. The sun, as you get into the summer, gets higher. So I also have the sun coming down like this onto these beds. They get plenty of sun. So the design for your raised beds is really up to you. A couple things to keep in mind. Your arm reaches about 2 feet when you reach in, so you don't want your beds to be more than 4 feet wide, because you want to be able to stand in your walking path and then reach in and tend the bed without walking in it. Part of the benefits of a raised bed is that you're not walking in the soil, you're not, compressing it. So you could have something like this. That's a 4x4, and back there is a 4x8, and I can reach in and tend it. So everything is going to be a function of 4x4, 6x4, 8x4, 12 foot by 4 feet. You get the idea. A couple design options. I have beds right back there. They get hit with the southern sun coming right in onto them. They get plenty of sun back there. I've also used containers where the bottoms are cut out. I grow my peppers in here every year, 2 plants per container. And if I spin around here, you can see how far it goes down. Again, south is over there. Now, if you grow your tall plants in beds like right here, say you had, I don't know, you want to grow corn in there, but let's just say we're growing corn. The southern sun is going to hit the tall corn. It's going to cast shade into this bed. So part of the strategy is taller plants over to the right, furthest from the southern sun, and then smaller plants coming out this way. This way, as the sun comes down, the smaller plants aren't casting shade onto the plants this way. You can also use taller plants as a strategy. Say you wanted to protect the ground, meaning as the summer sun comes, it heats up the ground to 70, 80, 90 degrees. That's too warm for your cool weather crops. Your cool weather crops end up bolting, flowering, and that's why you do grow cool weather crops in the beginning of spring when it's cooler, late fall when it's cooler, and then your warm weather crops come out. So you can set your trellises up in a way that casts shade, and maybe you can grow your cool weather crops longer. So for instance, this is a cattle panel trellis. It's loops right along there. Southern sun comes in this way. So I will typically grow cucumbers up that, and that will cast shade, and I grow cucumbers on both sides. We'll cast shade right into that space, and sometimes I grow the cool weather crops a little bit longer there because the shade from the plants keep the ground cooler. Now, you can design your trellis however you want. Again, that's west, and I designed the trellises here so that I could walk through them and actually pick crops off of there. And if you want to, again, subscribe for this series, I'm going to do videos very quickly, a couple more this week, on how you would plant this bed, combining peas and cucumbers, where you would put your tomatoes, peppers, maybe a zucchini plant, so that you have a plan on how to maximize this space with growing the crops. You'll transition out of the cool weather crops and into the warm weather crops, and there's a strategy for that. As we would come down more, you see more cattle panel tunnel, and you can get, these are 12 feet pieces, 4 feet wide. I get mine at Tractor Supply. You do need a truck to get them in. Right now I'm growing blackberries that work their way over from my fruit garden over to here. On this side, I'll be growing cherry tomato plants, and just as a strategy again, and this is not, you know, really prepared yet because it's still too cool. It's the beginning of April. These beds will get ready for May planting. So the southern sun is coming this way. I'll be able to grow some tomatoes here, some tomatoes here. The shade will get cast into the garden, and the sun tracks west, so sunlight falls into here, so the tomato plants all in this space will be taken care of. And I like to be able to walk in here and harvest cherry tomatoes off of there. This is a vertical tower garden. These are GreenStalk garden towers. I'm doing a whole series on planting and growing in these. I'm affiliated with them. Check out the video description, get a discount if you want to pick them up. So maybe you have a small space. This is where I grow in a 2 foot by 2 foot space, 5 tiers, lots of different vegetables in there, including peppers. And again, west, right, or I'm sorry, south right here, west over here, and these towers get a lot of light. They were put in a place where they're going to get the northern sun, the eastern sun, southern sun, western sun, and that's one strategy you want when you're doing towers or a small space garden. Get it to the place where you have maximum sunlight. Here's another trellis going across 2 raised beds I made. Southern sun is pushing, well, not pushing, but sending the light right inside of here. So whatever I'm growing up the sides, the sunlight from the south is getting inside of here and feeding the plants with the solar energy, basically. If I turn this the other way, this side would block that side. So by opening it up, southern sun goes in, more photosynthesis, the plants do better. Different trellises can be set up with a plan also. Here is one that's made with just fencing wire, some T-posts, some U-posts. It is facing perpendicular to the south. So the southern sun is coming in through there, hitting both sides of the trellis. The shade print is very narrow. maybe falling into that path. When the sun gets to the west, it's going to hit this way, cast some shade that way. That's all right. But by putting it this way, I'm minimizing the shade that falls from the plants growing on this trellis into my garden. And notice that I put the trellis back here. So when the sun is now, I know it gets confusing, but I think this will help you. When the sun gets to, let's just point over there, to the west, and it's coming down this way, it's going to hit this, and the shade is going to fall this way. You wouldn't want to put this bed, unless you had a strategy or a plan in place, you wouldn't want to put that trellis right here in front of the bed, because when the western sun comes, it's going to cast shade all across here. So in here I usually put zucchini and squash. I wouldn't want my trellis here shading out the zucchini and squash. But maybe you're in a really hot area, you want to have beans growing up this, or cucumbers or other vining crops, and you want that shade falling on your garden. So you think about it that way. This is also a trellis that I'm going to be removing, but southern sun comes in through here. The plants aren't affected by the trellis. I wouldn't want to put that trellis necessarily right there. I put it there, the shade falls into that space. And when the western sun comes, it's a little bit cooler, that trellis isn't even in play. The western sun would be falling right in here. So you want to maximize the southern western sun. These are some other trellises you can design. They're all mobile. That's made out of deck railing with a hinge. I have videos on all these builds. Different things, cattle panel, tomato cages, 8-foot posts, even a ladder works. You can do all kinds of different things with trellises. You just want to have a plan. This one has to be fixed up a little bit. Figuring out how you want to place it. This is, again, western sun would hit this, cast shade in. It's open to the southern side. When you spin over here, this one blocks the southern sun, open to the western side. And that's really the strategy. You're always thinking about where the southern sun is, then the western sun, and how your trellises will cast shade and how your taller plants will cast shade. Again, if it's the south, it is over here. If you do all your tall plants over on this side, they're going to cast shade this way. And then finally, I think you get the idea of planting your garden. If you were doing long earth rows, you want to go perpendicular to the south, and it would just be a 20, 40, 60, 80-foot row right here, 2 or 3 feet over, another long row, and that maximizes that southern sun falling through the garden. And what you would do is you'd put your smaller plants up front and then your larger plants in the back. The largest plants should go further away from the south if you don't want them to be shading out your other crops. The design principles, that's it. I mean, it's pretty much not so much basic, but once you get an understanding of it, you can design your garden and you can plant a little bit better. These are closet racks that I use for trellising. Here's another trellis that is set up perpendicular to the south so that the full light falls into there, and you can see some shade back there actually. So my compost bins do cast some shade, so that part of the bed gets limited sunlight because of just how I placed my compost bins. Some more quick look at the trellising and stuff like that. Maximum sun, 8+ hours, understanding how the most intense sunlight at south, when it's in the south, in the west, impacts your garden. Next video in this series is going to be really planting up some of those beds that I showed you, and I'm going to show you how to plant in succession, rotate crops in, and really maximize your space for growing through the season. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. If you have questions, leave them in the comments section. I answer like 95% of them. And please subscribe. I will teach you how to grow food. Thanks for watching.